Welcome to the Patrick Coffin Show. Some of the content of today's episode is going to be censored by our dear friends in Silicon Valley. If you want to see the full, uncensored, raw, unfiltered conversation with my guests, go to patrickcoffin.media. That is the home of my blog, the pilgrimage sites, and most importantly, the True North movement. If you want to find out what it's like to connect dots and speak with people around the world who can finish your sentences about all the grand media lies and deceptions, and we talk about history, we talk about how we got here, inside the Catholic Church and outside. So go to patrickcoffin.media and find out more about True North, and you can watch the full episode of today's conversation. I want to honor Mike Lindell. I've interviewed Mike 3 times, and I'm also a proud affiliate of MyPillow. MyPillow is not just about pillows, although I love the travel pillow. It's like a mini version of the pillow. It's the last thing that goes in my luggage when I go on a trip. It's like a little taste of home in the hotel rooms. Have you noticed hotel pillows are like cloth shaped? They're like logs. You just cannot sleep with them. So this is another reason why I love throwing my travel pillow into my luggage. It's also slippers and dog beds and sheets and towels and bathrobes. Go to mypillow.com. My name, Patrick, gets you the Patrick Coffin discount, 66% off these bad boys. So go to mypillow.com. The coupon word is Patrick. With that, I met my guest this week through our mutual friend Tim Gordon, and I've been impressed with his speaking prowess, his example of coming back from crippling anxiety and depression, porn addiction, a whole host of childhood traumas and obstacles, including a massive amount of weight loss. He's now one of Canada's strongest men. This guy can deadlift 800 pounds. He's a coach, he's a writer and a speaker, and he's my guest. His name is Mike Pantile from the beautiful country north of the 49 parallel, known as Canada. Mike, great to talk to you, sir.
That was quite the intro. You got me almost turning red over here. But dude, it's a blessing to be on.
Well, you wrote the intro, Mike, to be fair.
Let's not tell anybody that.
No, not true. Let's press rewind and go back to your 10-year-old self, because I can tell from the interviews that you've given and from your website, Mike Pantile. It's, by the way, it's PANTILE.com, MikePantile.com. What were you like at 10? Were you sports avid in sports? Were you active? Were you kind of classic introvert, the kid the bullies targeted on day one from school? What was 10-year-old Mike Pantile like?
10-year-old Mike was a chubby kid that actually excelled at sports despite my chubby stature. And there was a short period of time that I was that bully, very, very short period of time. But I've always been the extrovert. I mean, I prefer solitude, to be honest, but I do well with people. I like being around people for the most part. But at that time, and this is not me trying to be puffed up or virtuous, I was the guy that would tell the bullies to piss off because I had the weight to throw around. So when I'd see the poor kid or the nerd or whatever getting picked on, I'd be the guy that picked on the bully. So I was a bit of like a schoolyard vigilante. Surprisingly.
That's awesome. And I want to mention you're speaking from Edmonton, Alberta, and you and I have I'm sure we have more people in common than we realize. What was the turn for you? Were you baptized a Catholic? Because the Christian faith piece here in eschewing degeneracy and embracing virtue is obviously wrapped up with your relationship with Christ. How did that happen? How did you get from there to here as a practicing Catholic?
So definitely was born and was baptized in the church. My family on both sides are Italian, and by virtue of that, Roman Catholic. But I would say nominally Catholic, like a lot of families, and I'm the product of, just like many of us, poor catechesis. Not the fault of my family. They obviously they didn't know better, of course. They still, pray. They don't go to mass necessarily, but they still pray and believe in Christ, Blessed Mother, etc. But I was raised believing in God, and there was a time in my early teens where I kind of started to rebel against that a little bit, and I became actually very much interested in atheism. So I read all the books by Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris, the whole bit, and became like this like militant atheist / anti-theist. I hated God. was a period of time, like, Lord forgive me, in my teens, that I hated the idea of God. I said horrific things that I had to confess in a general confession somewhat recently. And so that lasted a number of years. I actually had like an atheist tattoo get covered up. I was that rebellious 18.
What did it, can I ask, what
If
did
you
it
look
say?
up atheist logo, there's like this weird A logo, and that's essentially what I got tattooed. And so I got it covered. Praise God. And so, and then from there, I came back to faith. But dude, I had no idea what Protestantism was. I had no idea what like apostolic succession was, or, you know, Catholicism. I just, hey, if it's not in the Bible, I'm not going to believe it. I was one of those guys up until, I would say, man, even last year. You know, I didn't really know much about church history. I got rebaptized in the Protestant church end of 2022. I didn't know better, right? So I thought this was the thing that I was supposed to do. And so moved from Vancouver to Alberta to be around my wife's family. We built a house here. It's been great. And especially the last couple of years, really become devoted to my faith. Always knew I'd love Jesus, would die for my faith, despite not understanding my theological worldview. I always labeled myself as like a non-denominational Protestant, which might as well be its own denomination at this point, right? I mean, everybody's a non-denom, right? It's the Bible alone. Anyways, so zoom ahead to last year, late last year, November, December time. There was a Sunday a church service at our local church, and Protestant church, and I remember they were doing the monthly communion, and this was, I think, the first domino that fell for me that transitioned me from being the Protestant guy to inquiring Catholicism and understanding the faith a bit better. I remember looking down at this like little juice cup with the cracker in it and feeling this like visceral feeling of disgust. And mind you, at this time, I had no idea. I had no understanding of the Eucharist and transubstantiation. I just had this can't be real. This it's got to be more than a symbol. Like what is it that's here? So I kind of shelved that for a little bit, and then I'm not sure where this came from.
Mike,
Go ahead, Pat.
did you feel like you were looking at the non-presence or the real absence?
Dude,
There's some X factor not here that should be here somehow.
that's so well said. The absence, the non-presence. That's perfectly said. That encompasses my entire thought process at that time. 100%, dude. And it was a month or two later. Dude, I can't remember what, brought this thought along. But anyways, I woke up and I said, man, I really ought to know what I believe. I know I'll die for my faith in Christ. But when my Catholic friends at this time, and still is my friend, obviously, Will Noland, he's actually the godfather of my oldest child and his wife, Rachel, of course. He's like, dude, you're aware of the teachings of the church. Don't be a heretic. One day you're going to convert. And I remember him just like saying this in the back of my mind, and him saying this in the DMs on Instagram for a while. I was like, oh no, there's no way. And anyways, I started asking him questions, and there was this realization that I had that, man, my number one priority, my vocation in life is not how much money I make, the businesses that I have, etc. It's guiding the souls of my family to heaven. So I should probably know how to defend my position, because when my Catholic friends or Orthodox friends, we would have these exchanges, I did not know how to rebut them or refute the points that they were making. It was like I had no idea. So I said, okay, well, Lord, guide me through this process, humble me, dissolve what needs to be dissolved, close what doors need to be closed, and open what needs to be opened. So I started at church history. And so I started to go way, way, way back. And what really, I would say, catalyzed the reversion, there was two parts. I read St. Ignatius of Antioch, his epistle to the Smyrnians, where he talked about the bishops, sort of the structure, the hierarchical structure of the church. Not just that, but the Eucharist and the body, blood, soul, and divinity being present in the Eucharist. And he's in 150 AD. He's a disciple of John.
Yeah, I wish more Catholics knew about the early apostolic fathers, because they're almost in the same lifespan when the apostles were walking around the earth. So they're like the hinge between the events of the Acts of the Apostles and everything that John wrote later in his life and the rest of church history. That's the hinge right there. Yep. And it's either Catholic or it's Protestant. It either started off Catholic and got more Catholic, or it started off Christian and then, fast forward to the resurrection, to the Reformation, so-called, the revolt.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you go from the resurrection to Martin Luther all of a sudden. So 1500 years vanishes, but you were finally reading the sources, not scripture, but still authoritative because of the importance of who the eyewitness is to this teaching.
Well, that's exactly right. And who am I to think that I know better than these Christians that were martyred for their faith, that existed before the Bible was collated and promulgated during this really critical time before the 3rd century. And so, here I am faced with this epistle, and it was really, I have to give credit to Joshua Charles for his writing on Twitter, Eternal Christendom. He's done some really good stuff in the area of apologetics. And it became clear to me that there was this universal church and this universal belief system. They all held to the same tradition: the intercession, the communion of saints, the Marian doctrines, the Eucharist. The list goes on. And so there was this historical intellectual piece. So I ran into this. Okay, well, I can no longer prescribe to sola scriptura. It's nowhere here. Because how are these men wrong? These men and women wrong? They were dying for their faith, and they all held this same view. Especially the early fathers, like St. Ignatius of Antioch, St. Cyril of Jerusalem, et cetera, et cetera. So there was this intellectual piece. And then I decided one day to pray the Rosary for the first time. I remember my great-grandmother, my bisnonna, my whole life, she would be praying the Rosary every single day. It'd be in her hands. And so there's like this vivid image of her praying the Rosary in my head. And I had no idea, dude, until like 7 months ago, that each bead corresponded with a prayer, or that there was mysteries. Like, this is how little I knew. So I said, okay, I'm going to download the Hallow app or whatever, and I'm going to pray my first Rosary. And I remember sitting in the stairwell right in front of me and praying this Rosary, and I was feeling really stressed and chaotic at this time. And now it was game over. I put that Rosary down. I went to bed that night. I woke up and I said, I have to be Catholic. This has to happen. I don't even know where to start, but it's this experiential piece.
I always recommend that people read 2 books by Thomas Merton, the monk who died in December 1968. I think he went off the rails in his Catholic faith around the mid-60s. But 2 books I recommend. One is called New Seeds of Contemplation, which is solid, I think, from an Orthodox Catholic point of view. And the other is his first book, which was called by Bishop Sheen, my spiritual father, The 20th Century Confessions. And that's his book, The 7-Story Mountain. And I think it's in The 7-Story Mountain that Merton says something very interesting, and it goes to what you just said about your dad. All of us are prone to this. And the line is, it's when we hide most that we reveal most.
Mm.
So you try to squash the script that you've been handed from your own childhood of origin, the patterns of behavior, and you make this kind of inner blood oath to never repeat it. But that keeps you off balance, and you end up repeating the thing that you think you're avoiding because you're not, you're not facing it. You're living right, as though you're against something rather than living for something.
That's perfectly said. Because most guys don't realize that until it's almost too late. They've gone and done the same thing to their families, and they're left sort of like alone and not understanding why things that went the way that they did. So I'm grateful that God brought me to that wisdom, I think, somewhat early. And I think that's why it's so important to have these types of conversations. So guys that are going through the same thing, and they're not wondering, and they're wondering, why, or they hold the resentment that they do toward their fathers, and how they relinquish that. And for me, I was like forced at the foot to the foot of the cross. I was forced there. There was no way else. I was like rock bottom. But for so many guys, it's like, well, you don't have to get forced. You don't have to be forced to be there. Just kneel and bring yourself there. And tremendous healing and wisdom comes from that. And that's what helped it all for me. Right. You don't have to hit. And that's the whole thing. You don't have to go make the same mistakes that I did doing all of this black pill promiscuous garbage to understand it's not good for you. It's like, do as I say, not as I did, which I don't think is hypocritical. It's like, dude, just learn from these mistakes. You either obey God's law or you break yourself against it. That's it.
Mm. Yeah. If you jump off a 10-story building thinking you're going to break the law of gravity, you're going to be broken by the law of gravity.
1,000%.
It's not a punishment. It's a consequence. Mike, let's in the few minutes we have left, I want to ask you about your coaching and what do you do to someone at the beginning? You ask a lot of questions about where they are, where they want to be. And I'm very interested. I work out of the UFC gym. So I discovered the forgive the metaphor, the power of lifting, the power of resistance training. It really has so many analogies to the spiritual life and doing something uncomfortable for a gain that you can't quite see in the moment. Same with cold showers, cold plunges, and that kind of thing. So walk us through what happens. It sounds like you're walking into a death camp or something. What happens in the initial procedure steps for a client, someone who wants to bring you on as a coach? Where do you start? What's the ground zero to start improving?
On the strength and fitness side of the coaching sphere? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it always, of course, starts with I mean, especially if we're in person, but even to a degree online, there's a degree of a physical assessment. Well, what can this person do? Are they limited by range of motion? Just like these real bare bone basic things. So the first thing I would get my clients to do is, can you do a push up? Can you do a plank? Let's get you to sit, kneel into a squat and get into a squat position. And from there, it's just, okay, where are you at right now? Okay. And people often think that they're very unique, and human beings are unique, but within a very predictable set of parameters, right? It's like either you got to get a little bit stronger and eat a little bit more, or you got to eat a little bit less and get a little bit stronger. So it's really not all that complicated. And at ground zero, the first thing is, let's try to get that first win as quickly as we can. Most people have no idea. It's like, that first win. So with body composition clients, it's always people trying to drop a few pounds, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm going to show you how to manage and track your macronutrients, how to use a food scale and track it into an app. It's super simple, but I don't want them to focus on micromanaging all of their macros. It's like, let's just focus on lifestyle habits and tracking what you're currently eating. Eliminate sugar, eliminate soda, eliminate going out to eat and having fast food, etc. Eliminating all those things, these little lifestyle wins, right? And immediately what happens, they see 2, 3, 4, 5 pounds drop in the first week or two. And then from there, it's like, let's just slowly add these other variables. Okay, let's add a little bit more fiber, single ingredient foods. Let's focus on eating healthier, moving more, getting up to 6, 7, 8, 10,000 steps a day. Slow habits, kind of like the frog in the boiling water, but in a very obviously productive and positive sense. And it's no different than training too. Start them light, higher repetitions, and over time we kind of slowly start to add weight. And what builds in these clients most often is self-belief, seeing them progress rapidly. It's quite basic process, but man, so much of our mental health and emotional state exists around how we view ourselves and our sort of body image. So I try not to be callous and cold about it. There's a degree of empathy I have to have with clients, because I was the overweight kid most of my life. Okay, so what does your lifestyle look like now? What does your activity level look like now? Let's start at the ground level and just like boost things up like 20%. And then from there, we can add these variables over time, and within a matter of 3-4 months, people are in a completely different zone, not just body compositionally, but mentally. And it's the non-scale victories that really sustain a person. I don't care what's optimal. I don't care if it's 5 meals a day. I don't care what's optimal. What I care about is long-term adherence and longevity. If you can stick to that, I don't care how suboptimal the plan is, over a long period of time, it's going to produce the same results anyway. So what's the rush?
Yeah.
Hopefully
That's a good point.
that makes sense.
Yeah, no, total. You're also emphasizing the importance of endorsing small wins.
Yes.
You're not going to lose 20 pounds in one day. So don't even, in a way, don't even pay attention to the scale, because in an important sense, it's especially at the beginning, it is not about the number on that scale.
Nope.
It's about the mindset behind the person who's trying to change. I remember watching, it was a compilation on YouTube of the show The Greatest Loser, but the huge fat people that lose all this weight. And I was very impressed by the coach. There's this an enormously overweight, morbidly obese, 400 pounds plus, could barely get out her door. And she shows up with her sneakers on and her workout clothing. And he gives her a high five. He says, "Congratulations. That was it." "What do you mean?" You showed up here ready for the first time. Mm-hmm. That was so powerful, because it's starting the flow. Like you're priming a pump. You have to get used to, well, I don't feel like running today. I don't feel like lifting today. Well, once you put those workout gloves on, or you get yourself to the gym, or once you start put on the left sneaker first, then it becomes a flow. And then you don't have to keep, I hope this makes sense. You don't have to keep renegotiating. Do I want to? Do I not? No, you've already made the decision to in the past. Now you're just making good on the thing you already decided. You don't have to keep
That's
negotiating with yourself every day, right?
That's absolutely right. Totally.
Good.
No, I was just going to say, because I think I try to tell people right off the bat that I haven't been in this kind of shape my entire life. I was over 300 pounds. And what got me to where I am now was I decided to go on 2 walks per week. I decided to start tracking my food slowly. I just eased into the process. 14 months later, I dropped 120 pounds, completely drug free. I just did it through consistency of cardio and training and diet. So just don't look at me now and because you're looking at, Mount Everest when you're an overweight person that has no background in this. It's the small wins, man. It's everything. And that's what drives me even in with training almost 15 years later, being in the gym, is small wins, adding a kilo at a time, a half of a pound at a time. Those things add up. I look back at training logs from years previous and it blows my mind. The small wins matter.
Do you have maybe we can include in the show notes just a link to really basic going from 0 to 1, like a training log where you bring a small notepad in and these reps for this long, this much weight. There's probably thousands online, right? Or apps.
Oh yeah,
what apps
man.
do you recommend to track your weightlifting progress?
So the first one that comes to mind is the RP app, Renaissance periodization, excuse me. And I believe there's a free version, and even the paid version is so low cost, super in depth training log. I mean, it can be as in depth or as basic as you want it to be, from my understanding. I don't personally use it. I'm a notepad kind of guy, but I've done it for so long that's where I'm at. But if you're looking for something to help track your weights and also your diet, the RP app.
Where can people find you, Mike? How can they hire you? I don't get a dime. I'm not an affiliate. I just want to throw people into your zone. So give us the website once again, and I'll put also in the show notes.
Sure. So you can find me on Mike Pantile on Instagram and on Twitter. I'm also a co-host of the podcast C-Mask with Tim Gordon, Will Noland, and Nick Stumphauser. For all things related to coaching, you can either reach out to me on Instagram or my website. I have an application form. And to all Catholic men listening to this, my partner and I, Brian Farringer, have put together the Catholic Masculinity Project, which is a school community dedicated to helping build Catholic men within the areas of faith, fellowship, and fortitude. So it's like we're designing it as a one-stop shop where a man can come, grow in faith, grow in virtue, grow in his masculinity in a community of like-minded Catholic men. The community aspect will always be free. We're also going to be running, bi-weekly men's group meetings, and we have a whole course selection on virtuous marriage, courtship, fitness and nutrition, overcoming lust, vice, porn, etc. We really want it to be the place Catholic men can go to, because we looked around at the landscape of men's groups and men's support in the Catholic space. And no offense to the boomer parishes, but these Knights of Columbus pancake breakfast men's groups is not going to cut it. It's not edifying. It's not iron sharpens iron. So if you want to join the free community, you want to join one of our paid groups, please come in and join the Catholic Masculinity Project. You can find that on my Instagram, my website as well, or you can just go to school.com and look up Catholic Masculinity Project.
Would that also be in the MikePantile.com?
That's right. It's also there. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. All that in the show notes and more. Mike, thanks for being a gift. Thanks for saying yes to our Lord and to the things that you're building. It's been an honor to talk to you, and I look forward to further collabs. Thanks again, brother.
Absolutely, Pat. Thank you. It was an honor to be on, brother. Been a fan of yours for a while.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it. This is the Patrick Coffin Show. Be a saint. What else is there?